While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Reaching out to the 50 million Christ followers in America who are approaching or already in retirement, you've tuned into iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, along with the founder of Retirement Reformation, Bruce Bruinsma. Check us out online at retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org, and of course on Facebook, Retirement Reformation, or you could download our app, Retirement Reformation, in the App Store. You know, when we step into our retirement years, we step into a world filled of wonder, a world we've dreamt about for decades, and a world that sometimes can be filled with worry and fear and doubt. It all comes down to attitude. You're here. You face the road, and it's got a T intersection. If you take a left, it leads you down the road to self-focused retirement. And it's focused on all your wants and what you want to do for you in retirement. And if you take a right-hand turn, it leads you down the road that is others-focused. A road paved with good intentions and marked with acts of service and making a difference. What's funny is that you'll run into another intersection many times during your retirement, and you'll often have to make that choice once again. It all comes down to making a difference. So in this 4-part series, we're going to talk about how your retirement years can be focused on making a difference with all that God has entrusted you in your unique set of gifts, talents, and abilities. Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of Retirement Reformation, joins us along with Diane Lonsdale in the middle section of the show. Welcome back, Bruce Bruinsma.
Always good to be with you, Jim, and particularly because we always have such fascinating conversations that are so relevant not only to all our listeners' lives, but they're even relevant to yours and to mine, and certainly to Diane's, as we're going to hear.
Yeah. Bruce, what are some of the things you see retirees focusing their energy on in retirement?
Well, some of the things that they're focusing their energy is doing nothing. Say, well, that's kind of strange. That doesn't take a lot of energy, does it? Well, I would say actually it does. Because you have to decide that you're not going to do any of the things that you may be prompted to do or that God puts in front of you, and you make a decision each and every day to do nothing. To get up in the morning, have breakfast, sit down and read the paper, chat with your wife or husband, head for the store. I remember my mother when she was in her 80s, and I'd say, Mom, how was the day? And she'd say, oh, Bruce, I am exhausted. And I'd say, Mom, what in the world exhausted you? She says, well, I had a 2:00 doctor's appointment. And that just took me out. And I go, wow, Mom. And so when you're going to get back to writing your book? And she says, oh, yeah, I got to do that. Yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow. And so it's just fascinating. People's lives, how they're able to exert energy doing not much, but when in fact God has called them, that they're able to impact a lot.
Do you see a lot of retirees, Bruce, though, that are focused on activities that are making a difference? Or do you see more of them caught up in that American dream of retirement, vacation and stuff and houses and travel? Where do you see the majority? I mean, you've been in the retirement planning world for decades. Where do you see most of the effort going?
Most people are focused on two things. Number one, where's my next trip or my next social interaction, as the case may be? There's one. Two, taking a look at making sure the checking account and that the Social Security money arrived and that the bank account is still there. Those seem to be the two areas that they focus on the most. And then it's, what are we going to do next? Now, there's a lot of times that's focused on grandkids.
Sure.
We've seen some wonderful pictures recently with the end of COVID or the decline of COVID and grandparents being able to hug their grandchildren and so on. And that's heartwarming and important and good stuff. But then what's the next step in their being a grandparent to them and being able to share wisdom? So I see, leisure, nothing, grandkids, money, and walking around the block.
So I just got to ask, did your mom ever finish her book?
She never did. Sometime we need to do a story on that. It's fascinating. In fact, I have all the materials to be able to finish that for her. And that's one of my bucket list items that I'm planning to do.
All right. Well, I now have it on my bucket list to remind you to make sure you get that done. You've already written your books, several of them already, so at least we know you don't have that to get done, but you got to finish your mom's book. I like that. Okay. So our theme for this series is making a difference. How important is it for us as Christ followers, born-again believers, to really map out our lives with intentionality in retirement so that our actions lead to making a difference?
One of the things we know that the definition of ministry is impacting others. And so when we start with the idea of impact, and then you combine it with that idea of how do we make a difference, it's then just simply finding, let me give our listeners something to do this weekend. When you're in church, whether you're going virtually or you're in person, just stop, pray, look around, and listen and say, who needs help?
Wow, great question.
Who needs help? It's a great place because either you will visually be able to see that. Someone in the staff during the sermon or during the worship service will refer to something, or God will bring to your mind someone who who needs help. What a great place to start. Again, my grandfather's words, and you've heard me say it 100 times, once begun is half done. But if you never once begun, you never get it done. And so taking that first step, we'll hear that from Diane Lonsdale a little bit later, as she'll talk about a process for seeing how can we make a difference.
Right.
Making a difference, it could be in your house, could be in your neighborhood, could be with your kids, could be in your church, could be down the road, could be in Afghanistan.
So as you and Judy have, enjoy your retirement years, how much time have you two spent talking about how you can make a difference with your time, talents, and treasure? I mean, do you guys have weekly meetings? Did you guys sit down and, you have a detailed financial plan, I'm sure. Well, you better because you're a financial planner. But how much time did you guys spend, or do you guys spend talking about, hey, here's our week, here's the intentionality we have for making a difference?
I would say that is a conversation that we have at two different times during each week. One is Saturday morning when we go out for breakfast. After we worked out, we go out for breakfast. And I don't know why, but between Judy and I, when we are in a restaurant, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, we are able to talk more easily. And it always comes down to, what's the next step in our roadmap. Second is a review, and often this will happen just before dinner. We'll sit down and have a glass of lemonade together, and we'll talk about not only the day, but what does the rest of the week look like. Judy asked me this morning when I walked out of the house at 7:15, and she said, by the way, don't forget about what it is that we're going to be doing this weekend. And so it's an ongoing process, but it's also a time to each year, we'll take two different times to be able to, when we get away, to be able to say, okay, we're going to focus a morning or an afternoon on praying together and seeing what God is telling us that's ahead for us, because it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, it is.
A never-ending journey, and he has those plans for us.
And when we come back, we're going to talk with Diane Lonsdale and hear a little bit of her story. When we come back with you, I want to talk more about the decisions, making a decision, because in retirement, that's the first step. We need to make a decision to make a difference. It takes a high level of intentionality. You're listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. We'll be right back with Diane Lonsdale.
Membership has its privileges. And with the Retirement Reformation, it's true. We have 3 levels of membership to access our growing wealth of resources. We also provide discipleship and training to bring the Retirement Reformation alive in your life. So join us. Go to retirementreformation.org and click on the Membership tab. Choose the level of membership that will help you rethink, retool, reframe, and reform your retirement today. The basic level is free, so you can get started today. Take the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. retirementreformation.org. Let's get back to more I Retire for Him.
Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. As we always do, Bruce, in the second segment, you always bring on a guest that's got a great story to share about how they're living out their faith in the later years of their life, whatever those years may be. And you've got a great guest for us today. Why don't you introduce our guest?
I'd like to introduce our audience to Diane Lonsdale. And Diane, I had the pleasure of meeting Diane, 2+ years ago, I think, was when we first met. And in her professional career, her experience that she'll share a bit of, I've just really appreciated the wisdom that God has given her and the experiences to be able to share that. One of the things that I just really appreciate is that she is, as my wife would call, she is tasky. And she knows when you got an idea and you wonder about how in the world you're going to implement it, which so many of us are asking in these retirement times, what am I going to do next? You might have an idea, but how do you transition then? How do you actually take steps into ministry or take steps into what God is calling you to do? And so I'm just so glad that Diane is with us. So to start off, Diane, maybe you just give us just a little bit of background on the journey that God has taken you to where you are today.
Sure. I'll try to give you a 1-minute background piece on me. And Diane, thanks, Bruce. I'm a grateful follower of Jesus. I'm a mom, and I'm a communications professional and have been for over 30 years. I'm from Chicago. And to be honest, by the time I was 32, I had pretty much hit many of my career and financial goals. I was living in Los Angeles. I was running the Burger King and Toshiba accounts out there. But I was a believer, but I was not a born-again Christian. And so I found that I was doing a lot of this on my own strength, that I didn't know what a life empowered by God's Spirit would be like. And so through a series of events in my life, I moved to Baltimore for a different job. And there somebody introduced me to a nonprofit or non-denominational church where I was able to develop a new relationship with Jesus, a personal relationship. I could know him as my Lord and Savior and the director of everything in my life. And things changed really quickly after then. Within 4 years, I was married. I was expecting the first of my 3 children. I was working in ministry. I was involved in many other things in my life. And so while I was still working, the emphasis and the balance of emphasis tended to change over the time. And it was God doing it all along, but I didn't totally realize it. I was just kind of, going through my daily life and just following the next right thing in front of me.
Isn't that so true with I was going to say all of us, but certainly the majority of us, that in fact, we just kind of move from one thing to the next. And then there's a parallel track that hopefully is taking place of how God is intersecting in that spiritual growth and the beginning to be able to realize, oh my goodness, there is more. He has it, and I need to understand it, figure it out, respond to it. Can you talk a little bit about that point in time as those new realizations started to come? Sometimes they come in a flash, and it's a big deal, but for most of us, it's just a journey.
So I mentioned I'm a communications professional. I'm a strategic planner by nature, and so I'm quite a studier. And do you know, in the early 2000s, when Rick Warren's book, A Purpose-Driven Life, came out, and then there was a companion study about finding your shape. So it was right around that time that I really started delving into spiritual gifts, understanding my heart, abilities, personality, and experiences, and how all of these things had been working together, like you said, Bruce, in the background. But this gave me the tool and kind of a roadmap to really understand it. And I started putting all these pieces of my life together, and it started to make sense. So I think when I understood...
If I could interrupt you, I just have to ask one question.
Sure.
When you made the decision, can you go back to the point in time when you said, I'm going to shape, I'm going to do that. I'm actually going to take that step. Can you remember that point in time and what that felt like, or what you were thinking right at that moment?
Yeah, first of all, I remember I was in kind of a crossroads in my life, really. I had, as I mentioned, become a new mom, started like backing off the career track. I was on the mommy track for sure, backing off the career track a little bit, ramping up my ministry track. And I'm a person that really likes to be prepared, and I wanted to be prepared to receive everything that God would have for me to receive. And I wanted the ears to hear. And because I like process and I like learning, this was a natural step for me to take in that process. And I learned a lot about myself and all of the things that had worked for me in my life, so that I could kind of wrap those all together and poise myself more in a more purposeful way for what was to happen in the future. And he had all kinds of things in store in the future as well.
Yeah, he always does. I'm always amazed at how much I don't know, and always so glad that he does. And the key step is paying attention. So, when we think about the Retirement Reformation, we think about it as a movement of people who are where you were, where I was, where so many are, and a process to help us move to the next steps in understanding how are we going to make a difference in this next stage.
That's right. Yeah. And, I think tools are very helpful for doing that. We have, if you'd like me to, I could talk about an implementation tool that we use in the workplace that I think really applies to life in general. And I've used it to do plans, to help me cast my own vision for understanding what God has for the next chapter of my life.
Please do.
And the process is called LIFT, L-I-F-T. And the idea is we want to elevate whatever we're dealing with here. It could be a brand. It could be a movement like the Retirement Reformation. It could be that we're just stuck in our own lives. And it's an acronym that stands for Learn, Imagine, Frame, and Tell the Story. And so by learning, whether we're doing this for a client, an organization, or ourselves, we need to learn. We need to look at all of those aspects of whatever we're dealing with. So for me, it was looking at all those various components of my life to see where was the synergy, and where did I find success, and where were there closed doors. Those are all learning points. And then the imagine part is through prayer and fellowship, and processing with people, imagining what would a new future potentially look like for me. So for me, it was a migration at one point, at that point in my life, from work to really ended up being full-time ministry, and now in a faith-driven work environment. So God combined this ministry and work together in a really a miraculous way. And then the frame is, once we can imagine that future, just sit down and write a little bit of a plan, because it's hard to hit the bullseye if you don't have a roadmap, right? And it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be intimidating. It can be 5 steps that you want to take in the next, 6 months to start achieving that goal. And then tell the story, which is what we're doing right now, right? Share our experience, strength, hope, what we've learned, what our daily lives have shown us about God's grace and His glory.
Well, really, if you imagine, it's how we all need to face our retirement, and it's really a discipleship model. What you just said, that the lift model is a discipleship model.
It is.
We need to learn about God, and we need to imagine the things and hear the things that He's saying to us, and we need to put it in a context that we can understand. We need to frame it, and we need to be able to tell our story, because nobody can refute our story. I love that. What does that look like in your retirement years? I mean, you're not retired, but when you look at the next 20 years, how do you plan on using Lift to encourage others?
Well, I mean, I think like I said before, it's sharing your experience, the things you've learned, the things that you're still learning in community. I think community is so important. I've learned so much in community, in what others can reflect to me about myself, about their stories, and just how that all works. I don't exactly know what my retirement will look like, because I'm not quite there yet. I think I will always want to do very purpose-driven work. I think I'll always want to, whether it's a volunteer or a paid, position, help be the navigator, because I have that strategic process. I often navigate and mentor and help guide others along the way. So God knows what arena. I've been everywhere from children's ministry to now, senior living movements and businesses around that. So
let me just pull out that one comment that you made, because I think it's critical. I think for so many of our listeners, they say, well, I don't know the future. That's too big a deal. I can't figure it out. It's complicated. I don't know what to do. God is calling you to be a navigator. There's a starting spot.
Right.
There's the place to begin. And then God will show us in one step after another step after another step of what navigator means in His world for you and to help build the kingdom. So I think one of the real key points for our listeners to pull out, and a reminder to me, is that it doesn't have to be a 22-page document. It can be one word that God is prepared and the direction that it is that you're going to go. Right. And I'm just excited to find out what navigator is going to continue to mean based upon the experiences of you, Diane. And I just thank Him for the experiences that you have and your willingness to be able to lift us all.
Yeah. Thank you, Diane, for being on iRetire4Him today and for sharing just a little of your story. I can't wait to see how God uses that in the remaining years, because you've learned how to lift others up. Love that. Thank you, Diane.
Well, thank you.
You've been listening to iRetire4Him. We'll be right back with more with Bruce Bruinsma. Hang on.
The Retirement Reformation website, online at retirementreformation.org, has a growing number of resources designed to help you in what may be the most productive part of your life journey. Let the door open into your last third of life with meaning and purpose, which leads to freedom and joy. Set the loneliness aside and experience the encouragement and support you need through online courses, support groups, books, prayer guides, life direction studies, and webinars, all designed to help find the new direction already planned for you. God does have a plan. Let us help you discover what it is. Make the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org and check out our resources tab. Now back to more I Retire for Him.
Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. We would love for you to check us out online, retirementreformation.org. Out there on our website, we have so many resources that can help you be intentional in living out your faith in your retirement. We have a whole bunch of things that will help you to make a decision and make a plan and put that plan into action, which is what we're talking about in this 4-part series, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. Bruce, you and Judy made a decision on how you were going to make a difference in your retirement. You guys, what are some of the decisions you've made?
Well, when you, if I could just contextualize that a little bit, I was praying and thinking over last weekend. We went down to Taos, New Mexico, and spent just a delightful weekend there. And it was amazing. After about a day and a half, the evening of that second day, God just started dumping ideas into my head. And one of the crazy ones that he did, and crazy for me, not for him, but he said, "Bruce, you got to get mad." And I thought to myself, what in the world are you talking about? I got to get mad? And then I thought, well, that must be an acronym for something. What's that an acronym for? Make a difference, make a decision. Make a difference, make a decision. And this whole idea of making a decision is much more complex than what we would normally. As a matter of fact, I'll take an opportunity right now. I was sharing with our staff here the other day that there's, you know how long it takes to make a decision? 2 seconds. That's how long it takes to make a decision. 2 seconds. Now, you may procrastinate, you may research, you may do all kinds of things. When it all gets down to it, it takes 2 seconds to make a decision. So here's the idea. Every day, have 10 seconds of bold. That means you're going to make 5 unique decisions. Those 5 unique decisions will change your life. And if you're listening and then applying those decisions, boy, will you make a difference.
So, but let's get personal, though. You and Judy have made a decision to not really check out and retire in the sense of the American dream of retirement. That's not where you're going with this. You guys made a decision to make a difference in your retirement. Besides running the Retirement Reformation ministry, there's some other things that you're doing intentionally on how you guys spend your time. What are some of those things that you guys made a decision to make a difference?
We made a decision that with the resources that we've been blessed, that those resources that we don't need for our daily lives and for our normal subsistence, that in fact those resources would be available for what? To respond to a call or an opportunity or a circumstance to make a decision. So for example, we've made the decision to continue with ministry in Laos with the coffee plantation that we have there. It's lots of days I think, gee, we ought to get rid of that thing. And then God says, don't you dare, because we got Bible translation that's going on there and it needs the support, and you need to get over there as soon as you can again and make sure that that's going well. So Bible translation, the coffee plantation in Laos. With a partner, we've started a private equity fund that will bring investments together and have 2 purposes. One is a marketplace return, and the second one is a kingdom application. We need to talk about that sometime in terms of what that looks like and how that goes together. In Judy's and my world, just a commitment to continue to teach a life group at church. It takes a few hours a week for that preparation.
And you're still working out together every morning at 5 ridiculous o'clock, which is...
Well, the clock goes off at 4:47.
Okay.
So we can be at the gym by 5 and we can be home by slightly after 6:15, and then we're into our day.
My clock goes off at your time, 4:47 as well. I'm good about that. All right, so Retirement Reformation is set up with lots of different membership levels that can help people make a decision to make a difference. There's some prizes. You got a free membership available to anybody. All they got to do is sign up, and then you've got some paid memberships. As we close out this show today, tell people how Retirement Reformation can help them make a decision on how to make a difference.
The first decision you have to make is that you do want to make a difference. Second, you have to be willing to engage in a process of both understanding who you are, understanding how God has prepared you, and the opportunities that He has put in front of you. One of the things that I need to urge our members and those of you that will sign up as a result of hearing this is download those resources and engage with them. Download those resources and engage with them because it's part of your journey.
And retirementreformation.org is a website full of so many resources, and we give away a free membership where you can get access to these resources. But I love what you said, Bruce. The first decision you have to make is you have to decide that you want to make a difference. But if you decide, listeners, to make a difference in your retirement is going to be the most fulfilling time of your life. It will be life-changing.
Meaning and purpose, freedom and joy.
So many things to look forward to in retirement when you seek to make a decision, to make a difference. Bruce Bruinsma, thanks for sharing that wisdom today, and thanks for setting up the Retirement Reformation and for pursuing it in your retirement years.
God bless.
You've been listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. We're so glad you tuned in with us today. It's just exciting to have you here. Please make sure that you check us out online at retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. You've been listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation with your host, Jim Brangenberg, and of course, Retirement Reformation's only Bruce Bruinsma. We're Christ followers, journeying from retirement to reformation, so ultimately we can say, I retire for Him.
I retire for Him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and Retirement Reformation founder, Bruce Bruinsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.